Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something critical for, well, any business trying to keep up. How you spot those big market shifts quickly, effectively, getting that almost intuitive sense for what's coming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In today's world, just reacting, that's not going to cut it. Identifying things early is everything. It's how you get that strategic edge, how you lead.
Totally. I mean, think about the whole smartphone shift, right? The companies that jumped on mobile optimization early, they weren't just surviving, they were way ahead.
Uh-huh.
Or look at sustainability now. That's huge. Businesses that saw that coming, that leaned into it, they're building real customer loyalty, finding new ways to innovate. If you miss those cues, well, you risk becoming obsolete fast.
Yeah, the history books are full of those examples, aren't they? It's all
Yeah.
about being proactive.
Hmm.
And that's really what we're focusing on in this deep dive. We're using some great insights from Kalyani Rajay over at Cognitive Market Research to give you some, really practical techniques.
Right. So our mission here is pretty simple. Give you solid, actionable ways to understand and respond to these market changes without feeling totally swamped by information, just the stuff you need to stay ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so the market's noisy. Where do you even start trying to find the real signals?
Well, a really foundational place to begin, and honestly, it's often underestimated, is systematically keeping tabs on industry news and reports.
Okay, systematically. So we're talking more than just like glancing at headlines over coffee.
Oh, definitely. It needs to be deliberate,
Yeah.
structured. You got to go beyond just the daily news churn. Really dig into those specialized publications for your sector, digital or print. Look for the meaty industry reports, the white papers, those deep dive market analyses. That's often where you'll spot the first real signs of big shifts.
Ah, okay. So that's where the deeper thinking is happening, the early signals before they hit the mainstream.
Precisely. And look, there are tools to make this easier. Google Alerts, for instance, fantastic. Set it up for keywords, get real-time pings. Subscribing to the key journals in your field is obviously crucial. And don't sleep on LinkedIn. Following the right thought leaders there. It's a constant stream of valuable, timely insights.
Right. So it's like building your own custom intelligence feed. You mentioned an example.
Yeah. So imagine a detailed report comes out about some uh, breakthrough AI solution from maybe a smaller company in your space. That's not just interesting news. That could be the canary in the coal mine for much wider AI adoption hitting your industry, something you really need to think about strategically. These reports often connect dots you might miss otherwise.
Gotcha. Seeing that bigger pattern emerge. Okay, what about the more immediate pulse,
Yeah.
the real-time chatter?
Right, that's where you absolutely need to leverage social media and online forums effectively. Think of them as like these massive ongoing focus groups where new trends, new tech, they get discussed and debated way before they make the official news circuit.
So like listening in on the market's brainstorming sessions.
Sort of, yeah, but strategically.
Hmm?
Platforms like Twitter, LinkedIn, again, of course, Reddit, even those really niche industry forums, they're gold mines.
Yeah.
But the key is knowing how to listen effectively in all that noise.
Okay. How do you do that without just drowning in posts and tweets?
Focus. You need focus monitoring. Use specific hashtags, specific keywords relevant to your industry or the trends you're trying to track. Make a list of the key influencers, the thought leaders in those online spaces, and actually follow what they're saying, what they're sharing. On Twitter, for example, just keeping an eye on trending hashtags in your sector or following a few key people can give you really fast alerts.
Reddit. You mentioned Reddit. I mean, isn't that mostly memes and cat pictures?
Huh. Well, yes, but also no. You'd be surprised. Communities like, say, technology or maybe entrepreneur, they host some incredibly insightful discussions.
Yeah, yeah.
You get people talking about cutting edge stuff, changes in how consumers are behaving, frustrations with existing products, early adoption stories. It's raw,
Yeah.
unfiltered. You catch that sentiment really early on, which actually raises a good point. How do you systematically capture that kind of unstructured info?
Yeah, that's a challenge. But getting those genuine early conversations, that feels like getting a sneak peek at where things are going.
Exactly. And speaking of feedback, moving from those broader discussions to more direct input, let's talk about really using consumer feedback in reviews.
Okay, this seems obvious, maybe. But how deep do we need to go?
Really deep. Your customers, they're your front line. Their feedback, all of it, is a direct line to their changing expectations, their desires. And that means everything formal surveys, sure, but also every interaction with customer service and definitely all that user-generated stuff like product reviews online. The amount of this unsolicited feedback out there now is just massive.
So those star ratings, the comments on Amazon or wherever, they're not just for other shoppers.
Oh, absolutely not. I
Yeah.
mean, think about platforms like Trustpilot, Yelp, Amazon Reviews. They are treasure troves. You can see what people value, where their
Yeah.
pain points are, what new things they're starting to ask for, and because there's so much data, you can actually track how sentiment changes over time relatively easily.
Can you give an example? Like, how could reviews signal a bigger trend?
Sure. Okay, imagine you start seeing not just one or two, but a noticeable increase in complaints across your whole industry about packaging waste. That's probably not just random noise. It likely points to a growing market-wide awareness about sustainability, right? A demand for greener options.
Makes sense.
Or say you keep seeing customers asking for more personalization options, or maybe features using AI. That's a pretty clear arrow pointing towards where the market's headed. If you connect these dots, these individual comments add up to a really powerful signal of a potential major shift.
Right. Tuning into that customer voice is key. Okay, shifting gears a bit. What about watching the competition? What can their moves tell us?
Observing competitor activity is another really valuable lens. They're reacting to the market too, right? So their adjustments, their strategic moves can be big clues about what trends are emerging or where the market might be shifting.
So it's kind of like watching their plays to figure out the overall game.
Exactly like that. You need to pay close attention. When do they tweak their product lines, change their pricing, launch something totally new? These aren't usually random decisions. They're calculated responses based on what they're seeing and predicting.
And what sort of moves should really make us sit up and take notice?
Well, let's connect it back. If you see several key competitors suddenly adopting that eco-friendly packaging we talked about, that strongly validates the sustainability trend we picked up from customer feedback.
Right, confirmation from another angle.
Or maybe a competitor makes a big, bold move into a totally new market segment. Or they start integrating some cutting-edge tech. That could signal a much broader shift happening across the whole industry. So keeping diligent tabs on these moves helps you understand how others are positioning themselves, and it informs your own strategy. And, sometimes even watching a competitor's mistake can be incredibly informative.
Yeah, learning from others' missteps. Okay, so this is all about pulling signals from different places. But we can end up with a ton of information. How do we actually process it? That's where data analytics tools come in, I assume.
Oh, absolutely essential. In this data-flooded world, using analytics tools effectively is how you spot changes without getting completely buried. Tools like, Google Analytics, SEMrush, HubSpot, they're powerful for tracking and making sense of digital behavior.
So they help us see the patterns hiding in all that online activity.
Precisely. By consistently watching key metrics, where your traffic is coming from, how people engage with your site or content, your conversion rates, you can often spot subtle shifts in interest or behavior long before they become obvious trends. Which makes you wonder, are businesses really using the data they already have to its full potential?
Good question. Can you give some specific examples of patterns to look for in that data?
Sure. Like a sudden, sustained jump in search volume for a specific product type or feature. Maybe you spot that on Google Trends. That could signal growing consumer interest in something new.
Okay.
Or maybe you see a spike in social media chatter about, say, AI applications or sustainable materials within your specific target audience. That's an early warning that these topics are gaining real traction. Using these tools properly gives you a much more data-driven, timely picture of what your market actually cares about right now. These digital breadcrumbs, if you follow them, can reveal really significant shifts in the customer journey itself.
Okay, so we've covered industry news, social media, customer feedback, competitors, data tools. Now let's zoom out. How do the big economic factors play into all this?
Yeah, that's the crucial context, isn't it? Economic indicators provide the backdrop. Big shifts in the economy, things like consumer spending changes, interest rate moves, employment levels, they can have a massive impact on specific industries.
So it's about understanding the bigger economic waves affecting our little ponds.
Exactly. By keeping an eye on key things like GDP growth, inflation rates, consumer confidence indexes, you get a much better feel for how those broad economic shifts might ripple through your specific sector.
Like how?
Well, think about a downturn. You'll likely see consumers getting more price sensitive, right? Maybe looking for value options. But during a boom, maybe there's more demand for luxury, more discretionary spending. Understanding these big economic trends gives you vital context for interpreting all those specific micro-level changes you're seeing in your own market. What's really interesting is how fast consumer mood can change based on economic news.
Right, all connects. Okay, so we're gathering all this intel from various sources. Now, the really key part. How do we analyze it all quickly? without getting stuck in analysis paralysis.
Yeah, efficiency is critical for agility. And one of the best ways to avoid getting overwhelmed is to really focus on your key performance indicators, your KPIs, the ones most directly linked to your main business goals.
So don't try to track absolutely everything.
Exactly. Pick the metrics that give you the clearest, earliest signals of a market shift. Could be changes in sales growth rate, customer acquisition cost, maybe product adoption speed, or just overall brand engagement levels. Monitor those key metrics consistently.
And that helps you spot trouble faster.
Definitely. Like a sudden, sustained drop in your website conversion rate or a big jump in abandoned shopping carts. That could be a clear sign that consumer behavior is shifting and you need to figure out why fast and adapt your strategy. Which brings up the question of how often should you actually be looking at these critical numbers?
Good point. Focus on the vital signs. What's another way to cut through the noise during analysis?
Segmentation. Segment your audience, segment your data. Don't just look at your whole customer base as one big blob. Break it down. Demographics, behaviors, location, whatever makes sense for you. And do the same with your data analysis.
How does looking at smaller pieces help speed things up?
Because you can pinpoint where the change is starting. Maybe you see a big surge in interest for a new feature, but it's coming almost entirely from one specific region or one age group. That granular view lets you spot these emerging trends within specific segments much earlier, instead of waiting for them to show up in the noisy overall data. It helps answer who is driving the change.
Identifying those early adopter groups or regions makes sense.
Exactly. And one more thing for analyzing quickly and accurately. Don't forget about dedicated trend forecasting tools.
Right. What do those offer specifically?
Well, these are platforms designed to pull together data from tons of sources, specifically to predict future market movements. Companies like TrendWatching, WGSN, Mintel, they put out detailed reports. Sophisticated analysis on upcoming consumer behaviors, new tech adoption curves, industry innovations.
So they do a lot of the heavy lifting on the prediction side.
Pretty much. Using these tools can give you a much broader perspective on what might be coming down the pike, letting you plan more proactively. For instance, maybe a Mintel report flags a growing interest in subscription models across several industries. That insight could prompt you to evaluate if that model makes sense for your business before the trend fully hits. Using these tools can save you a ton of time compared to trying to figure it all out internally. And what's cool is how they often spot connections between seemingly unrelated trends.
Okay, that's a really comprehensive toolkit. Now, for listeners thinking, okay, what can I do right now? Any quick wins?
Yeah, definitely a few things you can implement almost immediately. First, start actively tracking search trends. Use something simple like Google Trends, a sudden spike in searches for keywords related to your industry or products. That's a direct, real-time indicator of shifting interest or concern.
Super easy to set up. What else?
Keep a close watch on emerging tech. Technology is such a huge driver of change, isn't it? So pay attention to what's happening with AI, blockchain, automation, whatever's relevant. How are they evolving? How are businesses starting to use them? Monitoring this can give you early warnings about potential disruptions or new opportunities in your market.
Good one. And finally, maybe circling back to something fundamental.
Absolutely. Never, ever underestimate the power of just actively listening to your customers. Seriously. Regular surveys, carefully reading online reviews, direct conversations. Their input is a constant real-time feed on what they want and expect now. If you prioritize that direct line, you can adapt quickly and make smarter decisions that keep you aligned with where the market's actually going.
Okay, so just to quickly recap, we've talked about monitoring industry news, using social media, analyzing customer feedback, watching competitors.
Right, leveraging data analytics,
Yeah.
understanding the economic climate.
And then analyzing efficiently by focusing on key metrics, segmenting data, using forecasting tools.
And those quick wins.
Yeah.
Cracking search trends, watching tech, and always listening to your customers.
Right. And the whole point of all this really is to build that strategic advantage, right?
Okay.
Right. Adapting proactively, leading the change, instead of just getting swept along by it.
That's the goal.
Exactly. So here's something to chew on as you go about your week. Thinking about how interconnected everything is globally, how fast tech is moving, how much faster and more complex could these market shifts become in the future? And maybe more importantly, what kind of continuous learning habits will you need to cultivate to really stay ahead in that kind of environment? Something to definitely think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.